If you've been feeling despondent as Trump was about to take office, this video is for you. If you've been feeling hopeless about the old economic system and the way it keeps so many of us trapped in this cycle of trading our time for money and consuming until we die, this video is also for you. This moment in cryptocurrency, I think, is a little like the internet in 1995. A lot of people have heard about it, but they're confused about it. And they also kind of feel like maybe it's shady because they've heard about scams. But a big difference this time is that perhaps the most prominent scammer in the space was just inaugurated president of the most powerful country in the world. When I tune into this spiritually and look at the astrology, what I get is this. Trump represents the death knell of the wounded masculine. He embodies the worst qualities of it, and he's come to prominence at this time because it's about to fall. But because it's about to fall, it's doing literally everything it can to make a stir, to cause as much trouble as possible on its way out. It wants to delay and to silence the healthy balance of feminine energy that's coming in to meet a healthier masculine energy that follows all of this turbulence. One of the tricks of this wounded masculine death knell has been to make cryptocurrency look gross AF. Because in actuality, the decentralized technology behind cryptocurrency is key to allowing us to build new systems to transcend the dysfunction in the old. But more on that in a bit. So in this video, I'll explain what cryptocurrency is, both from a spiritual and a practical perspective. I'll share some of its history, discussing what I think are the three most important events since cryptocurrency's inception. And to ground this more in human experience, I'll weave in my own history with cryptocurrency as well. Again, I think it's so important to do this now because using these tools, we really can transcend the bounds of the old system and accelerate society's shift to a higher vibration. Close your eyes and picture this. It's 2031. And you no longer have to work a job that you hate to get the money that you need to survive. The old economic system has fallen and a kinder one has taken its place. Now when you need funds, you just redeem a seed to ask for help, and you receive them as a gift from your community. Back in the day, before this change happened, you wanted to make a film, but you didn't have the money and you didn't know anyone that could put up the money to help you out. So you wound up working an office job that you didn't really like, and at the end of the day, you'd come home and you were so tired that you just didn't have the energy to devote to your craft. And so your film never got made. But now you can use seeds to ask for the funds and then just focus on making the piece of art that you feel called to create. You don't have to work that job that you hate anymore, and neither do masses of other people. As a result of that, it's been really exciting to see that bad corporations are ceasing to exist. What's more, you don't have to worry about selling your film to make X amount of money to satisfy investors. It doesn't even have to quote unquote make a profit. You've already received the necessary money to make it as a gift through seeds, and your art has therefore been divorced from commerce in a way that really served your creativity. But then when your art does end up making money, you're so excited about this added bonus that you're happy to be generous with that, as others were generous with you. And so you give to the needs of others through seeds and receive seeds cryptocurrency in thanks when you do. Then, when and if seeds go up in value, you have even more wealth because you were kind enough to help someone out. You can easily see the way that this new system design eclipses the way wealth was accumulated within the old system, where oligarchs convinced the masses to trade their time for money, keeping regular people in modern chains, while those billionaires got richer and richer and too often even more corrupt. Because in a system like seeds where people can build abundance through giving, everyone who participates can feel more cared for. And cared for people are able to create even more unique value for this world. Okay, open your eyes, grab a cup of tea, and settle in. Let's look at what cryptocurrency generally even is, so that we can understand how to use it to get to the point at which we've transcended the dysfunction in the old system. So this is gonna be a little bit technical, but I think this foundational knowledge is useful to have. Bitcoin is the pioneering cryptocurrency. It's the first cryptocurrency. It just turned 16 years old. And it was first generated on the cusp of the second government bailout of the banks. What's known as the Genesis block, Block 0, was mined on January 3rd of 2009. About 3 months after the creator published a white paper about the ecosystem in an online cryptography forum to solicit peer review. The creator, who goes by the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto, and continues to remain anonymous. I actually included a news headline about the government bank bailout and what's called the Coinbase of Block Zero. So it's kind of like an Easter egg. Satoshi never publicly explained this, but we can infer what this means. Bitcoin was intended to create an alternative store of value and medium of exchange, a new kind of money outside of the fiat money system. The Bitcoin creator presumably did this because the old economic system was failing. Fiat money is the currency generated by governments, and it's inflationary by design. So if you remember that time, governments had chosen to bail out these enormous banks because economists thought that if they didn't do so, we were at risk of a global Great Depression. And if you were reading the news back then, maybe you remember that there was this narrative pitting Wall Street against Main Street. The banks were getting bailed out, and the bankers who caused this crisis were facing almost no consequences, and they were being bailed out by taxpayer money, whereas regular folks, Main Street, were being harmed. The Bitcoin creator evidently wanted that to change, and so that person or group of people designed Bitcoin to be deflationary. There's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin in total in existence. Therefore, the value of a single Bitcoin was likelier to increase over time. And again, this isn't the case for fiat currencies like the US dollar, which erode in value over time as governments print more and more. Bitcoin is also decentralized, like the internet itself. As of this recording, the Bitcoin network is generated and secured by a global system of around 94,000 nodes. Inflation in the US dollar has been particularly painful for us following COVID. And on top of that, corporations have increased prices even though the pay that their employees receive has not kept pace. So Bitcoin as a deflationary currency is designed to counteract that. Its value is intended to grow, which it certainly has. I started my career as a pro stock trader in April of 2008, about 6 months before the Bitcoin white paper was published and just as the banks were collapsing. The market was tanking, and I found ways to make money by buying gold ETFs, exchange traded funds. People didn't trust the stock market, so they were buying gold instead. I was the only woman or one of like 2 women at every firm I worked, and I got paid less than my male counterparts even though I outperformed them. So the misogyny was bad. But over time, I started to realize that the system itself was designed with an unhealthy balance of wounded masculine energy. It was infused into the system. The system manufactured scarcity. So like if I made $1, it meant that somebody else had to lose that dollar, which engendered competition for no real reason because it was a construct. As I said, governments are printing more and more money all the time. When we're living in a system that is grounded in that manufactured scarcity, that keeps us bound by this fear that there might not be enough for us. And that makes it harder to shift into a new paradigm of abundance. I enjoy trading, and I've been able to be consistently profitable as a trader for many years, but I only took that job because I wanted to be an artist. I'd moved to Chicago after college and started taking comedy writing and improv classes at Second City, but I couldn't support myself trying to be a comedic performer and writer at that time. I needed a quote-unquote real job. The best stage sketch that I wrote was something called Mime Brothel, about a brothel full of mimes. And it worked well on stage, it really did. But like on its best night, maybe 50 people came to see it. So I decided to make a film in the hope that that would reach a larger audience. But then again, you know, it was the same problem. Finding the funds in order to get the film made was super difficult because the old zero-sum system, needless to say, is not designed to support the creation of art. Fast forward to 2013. It was trippy because at least 3 people from like very different areas of my life who did not know one another started talking to me unprompted about Bitcoin. And I remember consciously thinking that the universe or whatever, the higher energies, were trying to tell me to pay attention to it. So I listened. And when I took a closer look at it, I was so excited to see the ways in which this decentralized technology had the capacity to transcend a lot of the dysfunction that I had personally experienced, you know, like working within the old centralized traditional financial system. I told everyone I knew about Bitcoin. And in like September of 2013, when the US government shut down this site called Silk Road, which had been like the eBay for every illicit activity you can imagine, which people paid for in Bitcoin because transactions are anonymized. The Fed seized like $30 million worth of Bitcoin at 2013 prices. and the price on the market dropped to about $90 a coin. So I bought as much of it as I could afford. And I bought Litecoin as well. I noticed that in the history of like cryptocurrency being perceived to be gross, this is one of the earlier times, because there was this mainstream idea that, oh, Bitcoin was being used for bad things on this platform, therefore Bitcoin itself must be bad. But again, it was this thing of, recognizing that it's a tool that can be used according to the intentions of the user, much like the internet itself. So at this point in late 2013, there were only a handful of cryptocurrencies. And Litecoin was one which had hard forked Bitcoin's blockchain and created a means of improving upon it by transacting more quickly. Litecoin was about $1.76 when Bitcoin was $90. And I saw that in April of 2013, both had previously hit their all-time highs at the same moment. Bitcoin had hit around $263, Litecoin had hit about $6. So that made me think that they might simultaneously hit highs again. And if they did, I would actually see a better return in Litecoin than I would in Bitcoin. And that ended up happening. By December of that year, Litecoin had hit $42 a coin. And by January of the next year, Bitcoin had hit about $1,100. And that pattern kind of holds true today in that the cheaper, good quality cryptocurrencies often outperform the more established cryptocurrencies. But then in January of 2014, scammers came out. A centralized exchange called Mt. Gox went under and the founder went to jail, which probably sounds familiar because we saw another version of that was eerily similar. And as a result, the price tumbled. We've seen a repeat variation of that occurrence in every cryptocurrency cycle, every 4 years or so since. So in addition to the traits already named, decentralization and deflationary design, let's talk a little bit more about how Bitcoin is generated. But first I want to stress this. So in much the same way that you don't have to have like a deep understanding of the way the internet works in order to successfully Google something, you also definitely don't need to have a deep understanding of the technical aspects of cryptocurrency in order to benefit from it. So each Bitcoin is created through a cryptographic process called mining, which basically means that people use their computers to solve complex cryptographic math problems, verify blocks of data, and then post them to what's called the blockchain. The blockchain is an immutable ledger that anyone with an internet connection can use to look up literally any transaction that has ever taken place within the Bitcoin ecosystem ever. So that transparency is pretty huge, really. With every block on the blockchain that's mined, a Bitcoin reward is issued to the miners. Since just after Bitcoin's creation, it's taken about 10 minutes for a block on the blockchain to be mined. This is what's called a proof of work system. Editing Rachel here. I should clarify that a proof of work system is what's called a consensus mechanism. A consensus mechanism is necessary because the Bitcoin network is decentralized, which means that there is no quote unquote trusted third party, a centralized entity, historically, like a bank to verify these transactions. So the consensus mechanism takes care of that for the network. There are a few different kinds of consensus mechanisms, which we'll also talk a little bit about later in the video. Roughly every 4 years, after 210,000 blocks have been mined, an event called the Bitcoin Halving takes place. And when that happens, the Bitcoin reward per block is cut in half. So there's then that deflationary pressure on the network as a whole. When Bitcoin started, the reward was 50 Bitcoin per block mined. As I record this, it's 3.125 Bitcoin per block. What's also important to note from a trading perspective is that history shows us that new all-time highs have typically been hit 12 to 18 months or so following a Bitcoin halving event. The most recent Bitcoin halving was around April 20th of 2024, which interestingly was also the date of the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus. So we're coming up on that 12 to 18 month time frame following a Bitcoin halving event, like right now. It's a little different though, this market cycle, because the institutionals, the traditional financial system is really trying to get in on Bitcoin at this stage of the game. And Bitcoin has already been making new all-time highs this cycle, peaking at nearly $109,000 USD per coin at the time I'm recording this. So in the early days, people could mine Bitcoin with their desktop computers or their laptop computers. They could just like leave them on overnight and mine tons of coins. But over time, the cryptographic math problems got harder to solve and therefore required more computing power, and the electricity cost to mine Bitcoin also increased. Nowadays, something problematic is that what are called mining farms, just these places that have huge computers that are continually mining Bitcoin, are largely concentrated in China, which makes the ecosystem a lot less decentralized. Although again, remember that the majority of Bitcoin was being mined in the early days when 50 were generated per block, as opposed to the 3.125 that are generated today. And another problem has been that as those electricity needs increased, sometimes unscrupulous miners have done things that were bad for the environment in order to generate this power. Outside of that handful of bad actors, the larger problem is that the grid itself is not set up in a sustainable way. Because Bitcoin is intended to be and is a global currency, if we're gonna criticize it for being too energy consumptive, it should be compared to the global financial system. So if we're looking at that, I mean, we're looking at 180 plus currencies being generated by governments across the world in paper and in coinage. This is done at brick and mortar buildings. There are employees who go to those buildings in gas-powered cars. We have brick and mortar banks that employees also travel to in gas-powered cars. And I don't see that framing when that conversation is happening. What's more, it's only cryptocurrencies that use this proof of work system, which requires mining, like Bitcoin does, that have these increasing energy consumption needs at all. Some cryptocurrencies use other types of consensus mechanisms, and the proof of stake consensus mechanism is another. A software developer called Vitalik Buterin, who also wrote for Bitcoin magazine, found Bitcoin really interesting, but as I understand, he wondered, like, what if a crypto network were designed to allow software engineers like me to easily build on top of the network? Bitcoin hadn't been designed with that intention, so what if a new blockchain, a new type of crypto network was created that was? And therefore, Ethereum was born. Although Ethereum has like 7 other co-founders. Ethereum uses something called smart contracts, which allow people that know how to code to build projects within the Ethereum ecosystem. And many have done that. Many of the popular cryptocurrencies of the past several years, especially in 2017 heading into like 2021, were built on top of Ethereum. Building a crypto network that allowed developers to build on top of it was such a good idea that a lot of other projects copied it. So networks like Solana, for example, or Binance Smart Chain literally just copied the idea behind Ethereum, but allegedly tried to improve upon that. And I think in those 2 examples in particular, they both failed. To date, I haven't seen an Ethereum competitor that has come anywhere close to overtaking it. And I really think at the end of the day, from a spiritual perspective, that the larger reason for this is because Ethereum's energy is more feminine. It has more healthy feminine within it. I remember going to Ethereum events in San Francisco in 2017 and just feeling so inspired and relieved and having this real sense that I was in a specific place at a specific time that was where something really evolutionary was happening. I think a lot of that feeling has gotten lost within the Ethereum community, but the intention of grounding that feminine energy is really present in Seeds. And Seeds was built on Ethereum as well. From a trading perspective, it's worth sharing that I'm a believer that something called the Flippening will eventually happen. The point at which Ethereum's market capitalization, so the total value of the entire network, overtakes that of Bitcoin. And I think it's even possible that the Ether price could overtake the Bitcoin price for the reasons I had mentioned earlier, that there are all of these network effects because so many projects have been built on top of the Ethereum network, and therefore more people are invested in its longer term success. Ethereum started out as a proof of work system requiring mining, as Bitcoin did, but in September of 2022, through an event called the Merge, it shifted to a proof of stake system. And because it's now proof of stake, its energy consumption requirements were reduced by 99%. But proof of stake isn't a perfect consensus mechanism either, because it requires that some users become what are called validators, putting up or staking 32 Ether in order to secure the network because miners aren't there to do that in the way that they're present in a proof of work system. So given Ether's value at this point, that means that people of some wealth are the ones who are becoming the validators and therefore wielding a sort of power. And needless to say, history has shown us that, when wealthier people are the ones who exclusively have power, a lot of problems can arise. In 2017, Seeds cryptocurrency was introduced, and as mentioned, they were minted on Ethereum. This means that Seeds are neither proof of work nor proof of stake. 1 billion Seeds were minted, which makes them deflationary. Over a period of years with various iterations, Seeds evolved into the design of the ecosystem today. Instead of mining to get Bitcoin rewards or becoming a validator to get Ether rewards, Seeds are rewarded to people for being generous and kind. So instead of proof of work or proof of stake, you could call it proof of giving. If you give $25 to help someone in need through Seeds, you get at least $25 worth of Seeds in thanks. That means that your gift doesn't actually cost you anything, and 100% of the value of that gift will go to somebody in need. But then, if Seeds go up in market value over time, you could actually build wealth because you were generous. And when you need help yourself, you can redeem a single seed to ask for it. Say you need $1,000, you can redeem a seed to ask for that $1,000. And if that's received, that single seed is effectively worth $1,000 to you for that need. I've had to use seeds twice to ask for help. And the first time was about 5 years ago. Back then, my friend Cam gave $10 toward my need. He was having his own financial difficulties at the time, and that's all he could afford to do. So he received $10 in seeds in thanks. And within, it was a little over a year, I believe, the $10 in seeds that he had gotten because he helped me were worth almost $2,700 on the market. So as more people become aware of these mechanisms, that design may drive the seeds market price up. Currently, one seed is redeemed to ask for help, but it's also worth noting that as the market value of seeds may increase over time, it could mean that in the future, people redeem half a seed to make a request for help and so on, so that seeds never become too expensive for a person living in a developing country on $1 or $2 a day. From a practical standpoint, it's as easy to help somebody through seeds as it is to give on literally any charity or nonprofit site. You can give with a card, although you can give with cryptocurrency as well. I'll put the link in the description. And again, you'll receive seeds cryptocurrency and thanks. You may also already be aware that it's possible to acquire a wide variety of different cryptocurrencies on centralized exchanges like Coinbase. But there are innovative decentralized exchanges like Uniswap that I'm personally much more excited to use. And I talk about the specifics of how to do that in other videos on here if you're interested. I want to be clear that I named these 3 events, the introduction of Bitcoin, the introduction of Ethereum, and the introduction of seeds, because I am convinced that those are the most important events that we've seen in the sector to date. There have been a lot of junk coins that have appeared, especially in recent years. So you really kind of have to sift through to find what is quality, but that quality is there in a way that I think is of this moment. There is a unique and special opportunity at this moment of time in this sector that, again, I just really want to make sure spiritual people with a lot of healthy feminine energy know about and then are equipped to engage with and benefit from. From a beginner's perspective, my strong suggestion is to find some cryptocurrencies that resonate with you, do your own research as you need, and just make sure you own them. Like, just get some on hand, especially heading into what may be, the peak of this particular cryptocurrency market cycle. Because as I mentioned, history shows us that the market may be going up significantly in the near future. From an intermediate standpoint, I then suggest LPing, liquidity providing your cryptocurrency, as a way to make passive income off of it as you're holding it. I go into that in more depth in other videos as well. And if you choose to do that in the seeds pool, it's literally the seeds mutual aid pool, which means that you're providing financial access to people in need all around the world, and you can make money doing that at the same time. So I know a lot of you are aware that we're entering the age of Aquarius and that Pluto left Capricorn, that Trump's election happened just before Pluto went into Aquarius. And I find that really interesting, and I think it makes sense because Trump embodies this wounded masculine energy and Pluto is about destroying what is dysfunctional within Capricorn symbolism. And so Trump is serving that purpose, I think. But as we're entering the age of Aquarius, what's gonna come to prominence is humanitarianism and technology and decentralization. And I believe we're going through Ascension and the rise of feminine energy as well. And all of those things align with the energy and intention behind seeds. I've done a bunch of past life regressions and I've seen maybe 3 dozen or more past lives. And one showed up that appeared to be a past life at the fall of Atlantis. I made a video about this as well if you're interested. And it was actually verified by a woman I just met, which was trippy as hell, and I talk about that in the video. I bring this up because my sense is that the fall of Atlantis is when the very first versions of this wounded masculine energy started to take power. We've been in that cycle for millennia. But I also have the sense that a lot of us who were alive at the time of that fall have reincarnated as humans on Earth right now, because we're going to be a part of this next stage of the cycle in which we're transcending that energy and moving past it for good. And I'm totally convinced that in order to do that, we have to transcend the confines of the zero-sum extractive old economic system, and using decentralized blockchain tools like seeds can allow us to come together so we can do that and leave that old dysfunctional way behind. So consider using seeds, whether it's making a gift to help someone in need or asking for help yourself. And then I want to leave you with this. I've shared this quote a bunch before, But I just find it really helpful, especially in times like these that on the surface at least can look super bleak. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And so in that way, through pointing our energy and good intention to helping others through a new ecosystem like seeds, which is grounded in building abundance and wealth through giving, rather than pointing our attention at the various forms of resisting the old way, we can more quickly transcend it.